Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham. A great episode, a lot of interesting things went down. So let's break this down. First and foremost, the whole situation, obviously, like Bruce finding the people that aren't his parents but look like his parents. And he's like, okay, what's going on here? And we see, Alfred there, and he's acting the butler and everything. I'm like, whoa, what's up with that? I was like, are you playing alone because, Jeremiah is threatening you or something? It's like, the way he was talking, I was like, what's going on? It's like, oh, they were hypnotized. And the moment that happened, I was like, oh. I was like, Joker don't typically hypnotize people. I was like, I would assume that's a Tetch thing, but maybe it is just Jeremiah. But lo and behold, Tetch shows up later on. I'm like, hey, Mad Hatter. But nevertheless, things went further than I thought they would. Like, I love Jeremiah's reasoning for this. To be fair, like, the fact of the matter is, because it's something I've brought up before, but nevertheless, I thought it was just like to mess with Bruce and stuff like that. And it kind of was, but I loved Jeremiah's twisted logic for it, because it's like, your parents' death was the most important day of your life, and I wasn't there to experience it with you. He's so, like I brought it up before, the symbiotic relationship between Joker and Batman, and he's so obsessed with Bruce. He learned as much as he could about Bruce from Alfred, like, what his favorite meals were, what it was like, because I didn't even realize they were actually in the Wayne Manor. I thought it was just some place he got to look exactly like it. I guess Wayne Manor exists on the outsides of Gotham, like on the outskirts, across the bridge or something like that. I never realized that. I mean, I'm assuming so, since you have to tunnel to get to them like that, but maybe that's not the case at all. Either way, I guess maybe that way. I mean, because it seemed like, at least from the outside, Wayne Manor hadn't been touched. So it's like, I just assumed it was in Gotham City, but I guess it's like more on the outskirts. But nevertheless, that was so fascinating for him. It's like, I want to know all this stuff about you. It's like, I thought we could get bonds through being best friends, but it's like, no, if we can't do that, I thought we could bond as brothers through bond of love, but then we'll bond through a bond of hate. He's trying to recreate that moment, because it's like, every time you close your eyes, who do you see? The person who shot your parents. I want to be that person. I want to be that person. When you close your eyes, you see me. I want to be the star of the show. I'm like, dude, that to me is so amazing, because it adds this extra layer to their relationship, their adversariness, because it's like I said, I've talked about, like, I've heard that about Joker, and sometimes in the comic books he doesn't know who Bruce is, but other times he knows who Bruce and Batman are being the same person, but he doesn't tell anyone because he doesn't care, because for him, he enjoys the game and he doesn't want to share it with anybody else. He kind of does, but it's like that's kind of like me and the Bat, so we got our thing, and it's like, this adds an even interesting layer to it. It's continuity. I think it's so good. Like I said, his reasoning, and it's so interesting too, because this added details I never really knew before. Like, for example, the whole Zorro movie, apparently that was his favorite movie. That's actually the movie he went to go see with his parents that night, which is interesting, because I feel like in all the times it's ever been referenced about, like, oh yeah, like his parents going to the movies and then dying that night, but it's like, I've never heard what the movie was. I've heard people joke about what the movie was, and that's just kind of a whole thing. I'll leave it at that, but the fact is, to know that it was Zorro, it's like, oh, you love this movie because a masked person who kind of, is fearless and stuff like that. I'm like, because I don't know if that's a thing in the comic books. Is that where he got his inspiration? The cape, the mask, and everything? I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Especially because that night holds a special significance to him too, because it's like, that's the night his parents died. So take that courage of this character who is fearless and applying it to yourself. Because the fact is, he even talks about the fact is, the reason why they left the movies early was because of Bruce got scared because of all the violence and stuff like that. So it kind of terrified him a little bit. So he wanted to leave the movie early, and it's like, oh, maybe if you hadn't convinced your parents to leave early, maybe they'd still be alive. And it's like, jeez, kind of turning things against Bruce like that. And then it kind of makes sense later on with the whole Z and everything carved into people's chest of people who die early in episodes. Like, oh yeah, because he literally carved the Z's in their chest for Zorro. I was like, that's so fascinating how they like ultimately all tied together and stuff like that. That was crazy. And this is also like a big moment for Selina too, because obviously Selina's trying to get out of Gotham and stuff like that. But Alfred, convinced her to go help Bruce. It's like, don't kill, Penguin. Go help Bruce. He needs your help. And she was there for him, because making up for her, it's like, I should have done something that night. But Bruce is like, you've done enough. Like, the fact is that she's been there for him every other step of the way. Like, yeah, they've had their ups and downs, but she's always kind of been someone he could rely on. So for him, it's like, no matter, you might not have been there that night, but you've done, because I think for him, he doesn't want her to think like, oh, every time she does something good, maybe that's what Selena's been doing her entire life, over the course of this series, is trying to make up for the fact that she didn't do something for Bruce. That's why she's always being there for him. But I think it's also Bruce being like, the fact is you don't owe me anything. The fact is you've done plenty enough of all the times you've been there to help me and support me and been by my side. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat too. And I think it also adds this shift to Selena not having, even though she was trying to kill Jeremiah, the fact is that she didn't, I think adds layers to it of being like, oh yeah, like she didn't cross that line. And then the extra twist going back to it, that it was like, oh, it wasn't just those people I got plastic surgery to look like your parents. Because the sad thing is, it's not like they were just forced to do it. I thought they were just playing along or whatever because he was threatening them. It's like, no, they were hypnotized as well. But the twist being the people he uses to replace them is Jim and Lee. I was like, that's so good. It didn't even cross my mind to think of that. It's like crazy. Because it's like, oh, seeing these fake people, who are killed, these fake people pretending to be your parents being killed, yeah, it's going to suck. Obviously, that justice side of you is going to want to save people, but it won't have the same impact. So he decided to shift up, the actors in a sense, and it's like killing Jim and Lee would implant this in his mind forever. It'd be like that night all over again to a certain extent. Like trying to repeat and capture that essence again was impossible unless doing it this way. So it's like it's the layers upon things in this. Also, when he was running away, he referred to Harley as Echo. I was like, oh, that's Echo. I didn't realize that was her. Maybe it's just because of the face makeup. Is that the same actress from last season? I'm not sure, because also she didn't talk at all last season, so that kind of caught me off guard, because he was like Echo, and even Jim was like, oh, after him and Echo. I was like, that's so interesting, because the fact of the matter is she did pop up early this season in like the first episode of this season. I'd almost let that slip my mind, but it's like, right. So that's kind of interesting to see that shift, like her from like that silent type to like talking all the time and being crazy. Like she was always like kind of a stoic character. So to see her like that is kind of like, oh man. Because like when we first got introduced to her, she was wearing kind of like that jester mask and hat that was reminiscent of Harley. And I'm like, oh, is she supposed to be Harley, but her name was Echo and everything? I was like, oh, I guess not. And it's like, lo and behold, it turns out she's supposed to be the Harley character, but who's to say eventually, like, well, with the way things played out, I'll kind of get to it in a second and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is, like, he's just like, you don't realize, it's like, without me, your life is a joke without a punchline. And he falls into the vat of acid, but it turns out he's still alive, but he's in a coma and everything like that. And then my brain goes, now I'm sitting here thinking about it, because I didn't think about it before. What if, Echo ends up getting replaced? Like, what if, because she's not technically Harley, she's Echo, right? She's still Echo. He meets Harley Quinzel. She's one of the nurses or whatever that takes care of him, because like typically that's how Joker and Harley meet. Typically it's through Arkham Asylum, because she's like a psychiatrist or whatever, and that could be what they're setting up in that, like during his recovery. There's like probably it might be something at the very end of the series where we see a doctor being like, oh, like, and he's like, oh, Dr. Quinzel, and it's like, that would be so dope. That I feel like that's going to be the direction they particularly take that, but that'd be so interesting. Like, which is going to be a little heartbreaking for the whole Echo situation, because if that ends up being the case, it's like, oh, I got replaced, so we'll see. Because I was curious about that vat of acid. I was like wondering what that's going to end up being, because I was like thinking in my head, I was like, is that the same vat of acid that Two-Face falls into? A lot of people have connections to like vats of acid like that. I would think a Joker and a Harley as well as a Two-Face. Those are the things that come to my mind first and foremost. But more so like the Two-Face situation. But maybe it's like a different chemical he ended up falling into. Who knows? The fact is, it's called Ace Chemicals and stuff like that. It's like, I'm sure like Gotham, like Batman continuity-wise, that means something significant that I'm just not aware of, or at least I'm not putting two and two together, because I'm not that well-versed in Batman canon, just the Batman lore and stuff like that, so. this whole episode also dealt with like the complicated relationship that Bruce is in. I mean, not Bruce, that Jim is in, because it's like, hey, Barbara being your baby mama. Then there's also Lee back in your life, and also Barbara's asking Lee to be her doctor. But then Bruce, I keep about to say Bruce, but Jim is kind of like, yeah, Barbara's not like you make the best parent, and she's like, well, you don't think I'm gonna make a good parent? He's like, what do you think? It's like, well, the stuff you've done, you can understand his reservations and stuff like that. But then even Jim talks to Lee about it later on. It's like, like the baby's still mine, so I have to, be responsible and take a role in its life and everything. Even later on, when she has the opportunity, Barbara can't pull the trigger on Penguin, because it's like, I think what I'm about to do it again, what Jim said, I think kind of resonated. And she's like, I'm not going to kill you for my baby's sake. I never love it. And Penguin being like, so who's the baby dad? She's like, shut up. It's like, that's so funny. It is interesting to think, like, once again, it's like where they started at to where they are now, and to think that, they'd be having a baby together. And I might have mentioned this last episode, but maybe I didn't. I don't remember. But that does add a layer to this, because it's like, for Lee, it's like, you're having a baby with Barbara, the same woman that tried to kill me twice. That Barbara even referenced that. And even Lee mentioned that, and Barbara was like, oh, come on, that was years ago. Come on. So that's definitely going to be a twisted triangle and stuff like that, because Lee slaps Jim after everything, because it's like, you let me down and everything. Because it's like, once again, it's the whole thing of like, where would we be if I'd done things differently back then? There's been a lot of mistakes that he's made, a lot of stuff that's happened between them. They've got a lot of history, just as much as the history between him and Barbara's complicated. The history between him and Lee is very complicated too. And it's just like this crazy dynamic that's happening between them is definitely going to be interesting, to see where things kind of end up. Like I threw out there before, like where I think things might end, but we'll kind of have to see. The fact that you're naming your daughter Barbara makes me think like something must happen to Barbara, and Lee and Jim must take over as parents. So like Lee plays like a stepmom role potentially, and that probably adds a whole layer of like, oh, like maybe they never tell her that she's technically not Lee's, but grows up thinking she's Lee's. Potentially, like I said, I don't know. We didn't see Barbara. We obviously didn't see Lee either, so there's no. It's going to be interesting to see where that all goes. Like I said, going into this, there's like 12 episodes this season. This is episode 7. There's only like 5 episodes left. I'm actually surprised the whole Jeremiah situation has kind of been taken care of. But to be fair, like he could still pop up, and continue his antagonistic role, in these next 5 episodes. Who knows? But we have Ed and Penguin. Once again, Ed, Penguin, and Barbara all working together again. And it's like, it's so weird to see all these different things come back together, especially all 3 of them having extremely complicated relationships, especially Barbara and Ed having extremely crazy relationships when it comes to Penguin. But I also love the fact is that they have to use a submarine to get out. Specifically, they have to build a submarine if they want to get out. So that's definitely going to be interesting. What I also love that Ed was like, wow. He's like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. And even Barbara's like, now how in the hell could you possibly know that? He's like, look at her. She's glowing. You're glowing. And she's like, well, thanks. Well, I'm just going to have to kill a Penguin. Even being like, so where's this submarine? Actually, we're going to have to build it. Okay, so I'm going to have to kill Penguin now. And I just love that. And even like I said, the kind of like they kind of end the episode on with her being like, shut up, when he was asking about the baby daddy. It's like, that's so crazy to me. It was also that moment where Penguin was sending out some of his goons or people across boats, because it turns out apparently the government put mines inside of the water to prevent anyone leaving by boat, by sea or whatever. And it's like, oh man, the boat blew up and that poor guy, and it's like, oh, and Penguin's like, hey, he's trying to swim to shore, and we hear another boom, and I'm like, oh, poor bastard. You even see the look on Penguin's face, like, damn, that kind of sucked, because he even talks about the fact is he doesn't really have that many goons left to kind of like, use as sacrificial lambs like that. But man, that's crazy. I mean, I think it's kind of like messed up that they would do that. I mean, they are planning on shooting down any planes and stuff like that, but still the fact is they were willing to do that. It's kind of interesting because Lee was like, oh, you're not too surprised that they backed out of this, because Jim was like, because that was the whole point of trying to stop all this, so that it ended up getting into the water. I wonder, is there going to be any ramifications for that, like that those chemicals going into the water like that? Still, the main, I guess, like they spread enough and there was so much of them that the mainland couldn't help but see like, oh, they probably had eyes on the water. It's like, what the hell is that? Ended up finding out that way. Maybe they have an inside source, whatever the case may be. And it's like, oh man, that sucks. But I think and I think Jim might think this too. Like, to be fair, like, he just kind of chalks it up to be like, yeah, excuse me, that they were going to back out of it anyway, just because things like, just like, oh, you think you take one step forward and just everything kind of blows up in your face and you're back to square one. Me personally, I'm like, they wanted any excuse to back down. It's like, they don't want to really save Gotham, but they kind of have no choice when everything kind of got revealed, especially because everything kind of got messed up on their side of things because of Walker. He even went like, whoever she is. So I was like, I guess not even Walker is really who she is. Maybe she took someone else. Like, I don't know, like, they still don't know why she's doing all that she's doing, but it's definitely going to be interesting. Let's not forget she's kicking around here in Gotham, because Jim doesn't know that, and he also doesn't know that Eduardo is still alive, or rather, should I say, Bane. So that's definitely interesting. So I'm very fascinated to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. Like, obviously, we know where things kind of end up because of the beginning of the season, where it's like, oh yeah, like, wasn't it like almost a year into this whole situation that like we see them all kind of joining forces, kind of going against potentially the military government, into a giant firefight. So we don't know what really necessarily started that. That might be Walker with some backup and resources doing all of that, or maybe it's the government themselves. Either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to kind of continue this ride and also see how we got there. But like I said, 4 more episodes until we get to the final episode. But I guess, nevertheless, we've only got a couple of episodes left, so I'm so curious to see where the story takes us next. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.